I said this on my Discord a while back, where I was like, now that it's becoming more like acceptable and appropriate for a lot of people who are terrified of their quote unquote brand being associated or tarnished in any capacity with like Israel Palestine stuff, you'll see a lot more people like openly reveal takes, okay, openly say what their points are. And I think, I mean, something I said back then, this was like months ago, was if you come out after like, 20 months of, or 18 months at the time, I think it was, of like genocide to like make a statement, and your statement revolves around like how all of these people that were correct from the start are actually evil and bad or whatever, and that your feelings really matter in this process. Like if you come out and do any of that like wishy-washy shit, or if you come out and do any of this like both sides are kind of bad type bullshit when you're talking about like free Palestine, the genocide that is happening, then I'm gonna talk about it. Okay. And that's basically, it's sad to see, but that's basically what ContraPoints did, like to a T almost. Okay. And I like ContraPoints. I've never had any issues with her. I don't really care about like all the other controversies that she's been in or whatever. You know what I mean? For those of you who don't know, ContraPoints is a bread tuber. She was one of the OG bread tubers. Like she would make these really long, well thought out YouTube video essays, bisexual lighting, all of that, right? And she had been, I guess, noticeably absent. I don't really run around being like, why is my favorite YouTuber not saying anything about this issue or that issue or whatever? I mean, it is odd when like you're a political content creator, or you have major political opinions be known, and you don't really say anything about like perhaps one of the most impactful global incidents, a genocide that is unfolding in real time. It is odd, but I never was like, why won't you say anything, right? And I guess people were doing that a lot. And so she did, she came out and like released something, not on Twitter, mind you, but instead on Reddit, which is, I guess, like a less hostile space to reveal this kind of thing. There are a multitude of different reasons as to why people don't speak out about the genocide that is unfolding in front of our eyes. For many content creators who like understand the violence that is happening, they might be worried about fucking up the bag, for example. For some others, they're worried about the saying something wrong and then being like ridiculed or bullied or attacked, which is part of the reason why they will just say, oh yeah, free Palestine, and then they move on, right? Or like they rarely ever engage in this kind of stuff because it is supposed to be a third rail. It was considered the third rail of politics by design for a very long time, right? They don't want to get like, they don't want people to go after their advertisers. Why are people so afraid? What do you mean? Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. I've spent most of my professional career combating anti-Semitism and still do to this day. And it's like not even a question. Like people will just immediately be like, he's an anti-Semite. He's a terrorist. Take his money away. Deplatform him. Don't put him on any fucking news outlets. Like, what the fuck? No one should watch him. Why do people watch him? Like people get really fucking vicious. There are entire networks organized around like doing this kind of like horrible thing, right? They will turn people into pariahs, right? By design. That is the point. That is the purpose, right? You get put on a list, and then people will actively come after you to try to like ruin your fucking livelihood. But in any case, that's like part of the reason why a lot of people are afraid of it, because it's like the real type of cancel culture, right? It's not like cancel culture because you like said something that was fucked up when you were like a teenager, and now people are unearthing that and like yelling at you over it, like, but it's gonna go away in like a week. I'm talking like real cancel culture, like you're not allowed to, you get charged with terrorism like Kneecap did, or they won't let you advertise your band in the London metro stations like Kneecap did, or you get put on a list and then you have prominent civil rights groups like the ADL routinely coming after you in mainstream media and just like smearing you because who the fuck's going to say anything? Who's going to push back? You get your visas canceled. Like those are the real impactful, real consequential cancel culture shits, right? Not like a bunch of people on Twitter yelled at you for whatever you fucking said back in the day. And I think that that's a real reason why a lot of people don't say anything. But Natalie is a smart person, like a much smarter, much better thought out person than these people that I'm talking about. She's not like a random influencer that otherwise does like makeup blogs or whatever. And that's the reason why she's like trying to avoid controversy, because she doesn't want to get her like Lush sponsorship taken away from her. This is a political essayist, right? So I guess, and I didn't like look too deeply into this at all, but I guess like the reason why she didn't say anything about this for a very long time was because, and by her own admission, it was because you won't like what she has to say. She was a PhD candidate in philosophy before YouTube. I know. It was just, I will say this much. As someone who really appreciates ContraPoints perspective, as someone who has collaborated with her, as someone who's talked to her, someone who's met her, I will say I'm disappointed. Okay? It's I know that everyone will say, I told you so, whatever, but like it still sucks. Okay? It still sucks. And maybe some people will say, what's wrong with her response? She didn't say anything wrong, right? And I think she basically crafted a message as to why she had not spoken about this issue that much, with the exception of the limited times that she said stuff about it, was because she couched it in like a hyper focus of whatever the fucking online left is doing. Okay? How could you be disappointed in her when she did a friendly collab with Hillary Clinton? Yeah, I didn't really care about that too much. Like, I didn't read too much into it. And I know people will say, well, she did a collaboration with Hillary Clinton. I think like that just spells that like someone is interested in pushing their platform further. That's what it could be. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit, you know? I don't think that's like, I don't know the extent of which her collaboration with Hillary Clinton looked like anyway. But BreadTube got a lot of people on the right track in the last 10 years. I understand why people would be disappointed. Can't be bothered with people post-game playcasting. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, I think that she had a lot of impactful videos for a lot of people. Like, I'm not going to undermine that. I'm not going to discount that. It's like literally what I do. You know, I try to convince people not to be their old selves, right? And I think if someone has been impactful in a lot of people's lives in that regard, it's just, it just hurts to see. But in any case, I think this is her real opinion. This is just her true opinion, and she tried to couch it in an intellectual way. But I do think that it's a very cowardly way to deal with something that is so awful, so black and white. Not a lot of things are black and white in this world. Genocide is one of those things that's literally black and white. Chattel slavery and genocide. Two things that are fucking black and white, okay? Straight up. So any sort of like, oh, I don't know, what about the other side's opinions? What about the other side's feelings on the matter? Like, you are trying to intellectualize your biases in the wrong direction on this issue. Okay? That's it. It's a super simple situation. Masquerading this as like a conflict that puts progressive people who care about Palestinian emancipation against Jews is unironically a anti-Semitic thing to do. It's just a straightforward anti-Semitic thing to do, because this is not about Jews versus Palestinians. That's what the media wants you to think. That's what the media wants you to focus on. And I think like it is especially dangerous to make this conflation right now when the overwhelming majority of Americans and the overwhelming majority of people in the Western world have very clearly recognized the reality that this is an unsustainable and truly immoral situation. So then it's basically like associating ISIS to Islam, but you're doing it in a way where you want to be woke and anti-Islamophobia almost. But yeah, well, I'll get to it. I'll start off with that, I guess. It's as you guys know, I normally shy away from talking about whatever is percolating in the takeosphere, right? I don't really talk about like the quote unquote drama and things of that nature, but there is one exception, and that is when someone has a political perspective or a take or something, especially as it pertains to this issue. That's usually when I explain the shitty drama. It's not like, I don't think this is quote unquote drama is what I'm trying to say. I think this is beyond that. I think this is political discourse. And let me see if I can find it real quick. Let me see. Let me pull up the statement. Yeah. Dixertonox posts, YouTuber ContraPoints has posted her full take. And I'm just going to go through this. YouTuber ContraPoints has posted her full take on Israel to Reddit. Okay? All right. Let's open the image in a new tab because there's so much happening here. There's a lot. It's an effort post. Okay? ContraPoints. User ContraPoints. And I think like it's significant that she posted it on Reddit rather than on Twitter, because I think she knows like the environment. Like, so many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a video on Palestine. Do they actually want a ContraPoints video on Palestine? Will they be happy if I get in the bath and pour milk on a mannequin of Benjamin Netanyahu? No. I have posted about Gaza occasionally and have quietly given money to Palestinian aid organizations. But I think that what leftists really want is for me to join their chorus of anger. They sense some hesitation on my part and are judging me very harshly on my presumed opinions. I'd rather be judged on my actual opinions. So here they are. Is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. I also feel a lot of other things. I think if she had basically stopped it here, even here, this is like kind of silly to be like, look, I'm a content creator. I talk about a litany of different issues. I've done all of this stuff. Is Israel doing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Is Israel an apartheid state? Yes. Free Palestine. Boom. It's over. No controversy. Okay. No issue whatsoever. Like, why is this issue being treated as though it is it's annoying or it's inconveniencing? You know what I mean? Like, why is this? Like, would we say this about the Holocaust? I mean, plenty of people, I'm sure, they didn't have the full knowledge of the Holocaust when it was happening. But I'm sure plenty of people, if they did, would have a similar opinion back then, right? But it's just so incredibly disingenuous. I have the other half of her statement as well. Don't worry. I have it all. And what's frustrating about this entire thing, and I mentioned this before, and I repeated myself last night, and I know everyone was like, oh, is this about ContraPoints? It's like, it's not. It's not just about ContraPoints. This is for everyone. This statement is universal. Okay? So before I get to reading the rest of this, the but, and then the post but part of ContraPoints statement, okay? Here's what my opinion is. This has not changed for the past 2 years at this point. If you are like me, a spoiled child of America, okay? If you live in the heart of empire and your tax dollars are contributing to unlimited bloodshed in the global south, but especially in Palestine right now, especially in Gaza right now. And your focus, after 20 months of live streamed holocaust of men, women, and children in Gaza, the complete and utter annihilation, death and destruction in Gaza, is still on your personal feelings, how you feel about it, how the personal hysterics that you have developed around this issue because of the takes that you see online. Okay, if you continue to center yourself, and you are just like me, perhaps the most spoiled person on the planet, living in the United States of America automatically qualifies as the most privileged people on the fucking planet. Okay, anything beyond unconditional support to the Palestinian emancipatory movement, anything beyond unconditional support to the victims of genocide is ridiculous, okay? It's been 20 months. It's been 20 months. We've all seen the death. We've all seen the destruction. Stop trying to rationalize away and stop trying to normalize this death and destruction. It's not normal. People recognize that it's not normal. And our institutions are seemingly immovable, and yet we still persist, and yet we still continue to push them with the hopes that we can enact some sort of positive change, hopefully one day get some semblance of justice. But if you're not going to do all that, if you can't if you can't see Palestinians as humans, but simply victims of circumstance, okay, simply just a group of people that you don't want to think about as people, as human beings, okay? Speak for yourself. I had a horror show of a childhood. Man, shut up. Shut up. You're doing it right now. Okay? What I'm talking about is our birthplace. Okay? As a part of growing up in the United States of America, you are automatically luckier than a Palestinian child. This is ridiculous. It's not even a fucking question. You would never say this about a Jewish child that was sent to fucking Auschwitz. Okay? The only reason why you feel like you can say this is because something in your brain is stopping you from recognizing these people as human beings. That's it. That is at the heart of this controversy. Okay? If you try to intellectualize why Palestinians are suffering, if you do all of this, instead of just like looking at this and seeing right from wrong, you're worse than like half of these fucking conservatives, man. Half of these conservatives who are like genuinely ruthless people, okay? Incredibly selfish people. Even they, like I know someone, okay, that is related to a person who was at January 6th. That's how much of a fucking MAGA booster they are. And they find what Israel's doing to be unconscionable. They're evangelical. They grew up with the mentality that Jews are special class people that must get Israel so that we can trigger the rapture. There are people like that have seen the fathers carrying their daughters and their sons in plastic bags, the remains of them, and that's it. For them, it's over. How can you look at all of this as in destruction? Okay, Cutie, what are you guys talking about? Cutie, this is not drama. I'm just giving you some fucking serious shit. Cutie is Mormon also, okay? What the fuck? Cutie's not evangelical. Anyway, or former Mormon. In any case, like this is such a uniquely violent circumstance. Okay, we've never had an instance where like we have seen the Holocaust unfold in real time. That has never happened. Okay? In the past, we've had glimpses of it, you know what I mean? Illegal incursions, death, destruction, violence. But never to this degree and never in broad daylight in real fucking time. Except the Holocaust? No. The Holocaust is actually exactly the original Holocaust is exactly what I'm talking about. Are you kidding me? There was no internet, and half of the people outside of the German occupied territories were completely oblivious to what was going on in the death camps. Some Jews were suspicious. Some people that were being shipped to the Holocaust, to the concentration camps, were suspicious, and understandably so. They took action. The partisans did, right? But for the most part, people were not this tuned in to everything that was going on until the camps were liberated. Nazi propaganda, just like Israeli propaganda, was fairly strong at the time. And there were also obviously technological limitations that stopped people from figuring things out. There were surveillance reports that came out. Like, I remember reading something about the British spy agencies initially writing reports on these death camps. And it was so violent. It was so unimaginably violent. People didn't even believe it. Okay? They were like, there's no way that's real. And in spite of all of that, the Nazis also made a fake, sanitized version of a camp that they brought the German Red Cross to, which was Nazi-affiliated, and then the International Red Cross Association to. These are all very famous incidents. Theresienstadt. Did I say it right? Probably not. Anyway, I'm moving away from the broader point that I was making, okay? Yes. A lot of these incidents might come across as familiar to you because that's precisely what Israel has been doing. They've been playing the Nazi-style Holocaust playbook in perpetuity, playing itself out every single day. The only unique instance here is that we get to see the people that are victims to it in real time, in broad daylight. We hear their cries. We see them as human beings. There is more information on this stuff than ever before. But in any case, as I was saying, when all of this is unfolding and everyone is aware of it, if you're going to come out and be like, I was quiet for the past 20 months, but, you know, now I have a statement and it's wishy-washy and it's both sides bullshit or fucking focusing on like leftists online, then spare yourself and everyone else the fucking agita and just keep quiet. Just stay quiet. There's no reason to just come out. There's no honor in coming out like this to be like, here's why I didn't say anything. Okay? On the other hand, on the other side of this, if you want to know my opinion on this, and I've said it before, and I've said this about ICE protests as well, anti-ICE protests as well. I said this about people who want to fight back against the Trump administration now. Okay? If you get over yourself and you get over your own like moral hangups or anything like that, and then you support the Palestinian emancipatory movement, and that's it, and you say free Palestine, it don't matter what I said in the past. I'm here. I've learned my lessons. I've changed my mind. Or even if you just say, hey guys, I'm pro-Palestine. I've been pro-Palestine. I just haven't really spoken about it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. As soon as you do that, I'm with you. You know, I and many others in this movement will welcome you with open arms. Okay? They'll always do that because we need the numbers. Okay? There is no other way to fight back against this. This is the only way to do it, is to keep up the pressure. And you need more people from every different walk of life, from every different background, regardless of what their other opinions are. If they're united on this issue and they're protesting, then they're good with me. Okay? And I've always maintained this position. But if they cynically say that they're, you know, pro-Palestine, only to just like try to fucking criticize the people who've been there for a very long time, only to go out and go out of your way to just be like, I'm pro-Palestine. Okay, now that I've said it's a genocide, can we really talk about what really matters? My own fucking feelings and how annoying the left is? Like, then you're just saying that as a talking point just so you can do this other shit. It's fucking insane. And everyone can see it. Like, what do you mean? What are you doing? Trying to carve out a little space for yourself and others like you who are, you know, they think it's a genocide, but no one should resist against it. They think it's a genocide, but no one should speak out against it. They think it's a genocide, but no one should protest against it. Like, what kind of fucking position is this? Then you don't think it's a genocide. Because in your framework, it doesn't. You don't believe it. You don't believe yourself. Okay. And the last point that I made was most of the liberal Zionists that were screaming after October 7, okay, that were demanding unconditional loyalty and support to the apartheid state, they either became psychotic Kahanists, okay, like Meyer Kahan, or they became anti-Zionists. Like there are examples of liberal Zionists that months after October 7 turned into anti-Zionists. Maybe initially they were like very passionate, very upset at Hamas. But since then, they've realized that, yeah, objectively, what Israel is doing is a genocide. This is unconscionable. This is the evolution of Zionism. And they've recognized it on their own and they've changed their minds. Or the last category is liberal Zionists who just stay quiet because they can read the fucking room. There are examples of people that I have admired, okay, that, for example, I have a difference in opinion on with respect to Israel's apartheid, with respect to the genocide that Israel is doing, who can't get themselves to say that this is Israel's problem. They say it's Benjamin Netanyahu's war. They say, Israel is a right-wing place, is a fascist place, but like also simultaneously seemingly make excuses, right? There are old liberal Zionists who I admire. Bernie Sanders is one of them. But Bernie Sanders, regardless of his difference in opinion on this issue, does not make this the singular force of his political convictions. He understands that there are people who are far more radical than he is, far more invested in the emancipation of Palestinians, and he never fucking sits there and goes, fuck you for doing that. Okay? He doesn't do the cynical, this is anti-Semitism, this is like extreme anti-Semitism, I don't agree with this. He doesn't do that. He doesn't get in the way. As a matter of fact, he endorses people that have a more radical position than he does. I don't know what's going on in his mind, but as long as someone, regardless of their difference in opinion on this issue, okay, but as long as someone is not getting in the way of other people who are doing their very best, trying whatever they can, when everything seems so hopeless in the face of unimaginable cruelty, when someone is doing, when someone who has a disagreement, yeah, Brad Lander is another example, when someone who has a disagreement with all that, who doesn't make that the focal point, the central point of their politics, and doesn't stand in opposition of those who have passed their framework, and sees them as allies, then I have respect for them. I, on the other hand, have no respect for people who are, at this point especially, still both sidesing this shit. Okay? That's crazy, man. What are we doing? You can't try to punish people for being correct early and still present yourself in a progressive posture. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So let's see what she said. As I said, is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. But I also feel a lot of other things. No need to say any of this stuff, honestly. One, doom. She also like presented this Reddit post like one of her fucking videos, which is so crazy. Like with the paragraph titles and everything. The week after October 7, it was clear the mood among the Israeli leaders and civilians was overwhelmingly kill or be killed. Existential panic and unstoppable lust for revenge. It reminded me of the U.S. after 9/11. There was no reasoning or protesting them out of it. Nor was it politically feasible for the U.S. to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference. That's just objectively incorrect. And it makes me feel like she doesn't know enough about this issue. Because there's only two options here. Either she's cynically misinforming people, or she just genuinely is oblivious to this reality. And I think it's the second. Okay? The idea that, well, they're just bloodthirsty, not much we can do about it, is one thing, which is also crazy. Like, just because a foreign entity, a foreign government is experiencing bloodlust doesn't mean that we can't protest that, is fucking nuts. Okay? But beyond that, ContraPoints is who said this. But beyond that, the notion that, like, it was not politically feasible for the U.S. to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference is wrong. If that was the case, Biden would not have flown to Israel a week after October 7 and did the now known as the bear hug strategy with Benjamin Netanyahu, and then accelerated $14 billion in weapons transfers to Israel with haste. It's just wrong. It is just wrong information. You are incorrect. Okay? You're just wrong about this. If this is the genuine logical framework, if these are the underlying premises that you are building your opinion off of, you're just wrong. Okay? This is not even I'm not even making a moral statement here. I'm saying you are wrong. 100%. Since October 7, America is responsible for 70% of all munitions that Israel has deployed both on Gaza and all munitions that have been deployed to defend Israel in their defense systems. 70%. The United States of America is the country that keeps Israel as violent as it wants to be. Israel is our attack dog in the region. It is ridiculous. If Israel was not reliant on our endless support, both political cover at the UN and on the international stage, and also, political cover from like sanctions that would broadly be sent to any other country that was doing this level of ethnic cleansing, this much in broad daylight with Western munitions. Okay. We give it political cover, we give it protection, but most importantly, we give it directly the weapons that they use on the Palestinians. If that wasn't the case, Israel would not have a multi-billion-dollar propaganda network that steadily focuses on changing Western societal attitudes towards Israel in a positive way all the time. They would not have this sophisticated web of influence in perpetuity since the inception of the state of Israel. It's fucking ridiculous. Okay? Why are they spending all that money then? For fun? Of course not. They're spending it because they also have to. They recognize that propaganda is an absolute necessity for this continued support. And this continued support is an absolute must for Israel's continuation as a violent apartheid regime. One that is now doing genocide. So that's just objectively wrong. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan strategy and diplomacy. Bullshit. Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years, so there was a sense of futility, but worse. 2, misery. The leftist pro-Palestine movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely opposition to the genocide, but opposition to Zionism in general. Yes, of course. The leftist anti-fascist movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely the opposition to the Wehrmacht, but it was, or opposition to the Holocaust, but it was actually opposition to Nazism in general. That is, opposition to the existence of Germany as an Aryan state. And here they decided to draw the line separating decent people from genocidal fascists, which had the following consequences. It shrunk the coalition. Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. So here it is. Again, wrong. Wrong. This is the Will Stancil tweet from October 8th. The Matt Iglesias tweet and the Will Stancil tweet from like October 8, 2023, saying the left will never survive this. What has taken place on October 7 is so horrifyingly violent that the DSA is over, the left will never survive this, there will never be a coalition that cares about Palestine ever again. And as a matter of fact, anyone who supports this is supporting October 7, and therefore there will never be a left movement in this country ever again. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying almost 2 years ago. Look at the situation now. The Palestinian emancipatory movement has never had this much support in the United States of America. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Also wrong. The notion that these people that were more knowledgeable on the issue of Palestine, on who was being oppressed and who was doing the oppression, and the ideological reasons for why Israel was doing this oppression, this exterminationist policy, as a direct consequence of Zionism being an ethno-religious supremacist ideology that revolves around the extermination of the indigenous population, the otherizing and the dehumanization of all Palestinians, Christian, Muslim alike, and all Arabs in general. The monolithization of all Arabs as a parasitic force is identical to the Übermensch mentality of Nazi Germany. It is the same exact type of fascist policy making. It is the same exact type of fascist ideology. So for someone who has written extensively about the alt-right and the Nazis and whatnot, I am shocked at how someone like ContraPoints, who is very well read on this stuff, cannot put two and two together. It makes no sense. Okay? And it didn't shrink the fucking coalition at all. So you're just objectively wrong about that. When you look at the Democratic Party's base of support, I mean, the Harry Enton CNN Holy Toledo video comes to mind. Harry Enton points to Democratic Party support for Israel and Israelis shifting more than 60 points in the direction away from being pro-Israel to being pro-Palestine by 42 points. Used to be pro-Israel by 17 points. And then post-October 7, when this ethnic cleansing campaign accelerated and everyone could see it, it turned into a plus 43-point swing in the direction of Palestinians. So this coalition has grown, and I see it. I've mentioned this over and over again. We talk about this off camera as well with other people who have been talking about Palestinian emancipation for decades, myself included. Like, I have seen this environment, the information environment, and the previous methods of like squashing any sort of criticism of Israel go away. It withered away. I myself am living and breathing proof. A political commentator who is able to speak convincingly on Palestinian emancipation since October 8, 2023, without being utterly destroyed. You have hundreds of thousands of people in European capitals taking to the streets, demanding an end to this bloodshed. This is unheard of. Unheard of. Something that happened quietly over the past 10 years, that the thing you're supposed to say about Israel, Palestine, and progressive circles shifted from a two-state solution message to a binationalism message, which has greatly increased intra-left coalition tension. This is on October 13th, 2023. When the spectrum of opinion ranged from stridently pro-Israel but pays lip service to the two-state solution to fired up about Israeli human rights abuses and the need for a Palestinian state, it's easy for people who don't really care, most people, to fudge it. Once you raise the stakes for what counts as sympathizing with Palestinians to the level of from the river to the sea, you generate a much more polarized debate that can't be fudged. A question that I find generally interesting in politics is, when does it make sense to try to deliberately polarize an issue? It's not never, but it's also not always. And I think the practical upshot of this particular polarization dynamic is going to be bad for Palestinians. Note, for example, that Israel-Palestine is the only issue I can think of on which Joe Biden has positioned himself to the right of Barack Obama. He was wrong, objectively. He was wrong on this. But it's especially crazy to me to be wrong on this 20 months after the fact. Matt Iglesias is always wrong, okay? He's always the first to be wrong. How are you going to be the last to be wrong? I never thought that there was a position worse than Matt Iglesias is on this issue. Yeah, Matt Iglesias is always wrong. Fork found in the kitchen. So it did not actually shrink the coalition, okay? Zionist is a very broad category, yeah, by design. And there's a lot of lies being told about what Zionism is. Also by design. This is the reason why Zionism is oftentimes in the media covered as like, do you care as a Jew about the state of Israel? But you know what's never talked about? Because I don't know why. Well, I do know why we center this conversation around Jews, okay? But there is a far larger force of Zionism around the globe, throughout history, and certainly in the United States of America, that is far more consequential and has outsized control in American politics than Jews and their opinion on Israel. It's evangelical Zionism. Kufi is the largest donation group to the settlement project to Israel in general in this country, Christians United for Israel. It is evangelical Christians that are the fucking force. This is why I have always said that even if every single American Jew tomorrow turned around and said, I'm an anti-Zionist, America's foreign policy and its association with Israel would not change, especially in the short term. Because America's investment in Israel has nothing to do with Jews as a special category or as a special class. It has everything to do with material interest. Okay? Now, having said that, has there been a lot of influence peddling in the process over the course of the past 77, 78 years? Of course there has been. Is there an ideological component to the zealotry demonstrated by a lot of Christian Zionists, Jewish Zionists alike? Absolutely. But that's not the driving force of this allegiance. That's not the driving force of this partnership. That's not the reason why, you know, when USS Liberty happens, like the American government's like, oh, don't say anything, you know? That's not the reason why Israel's a special status client state, okay? It is the fact that Israel is a unsinkable aircraft carrier with its own espionage facilities. It is America's very own special attack dog that it can always control in a resource-rich region. Rich both in oil, but also incredibly important for global trade, okay, with the Suez Canal. That's it. That's precisely why Joe Biden said in the 90s, if Israel didn't exist, we'd make one. He was right. He was honest about America's framework on this issue. It was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from a present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? I don't see how this could happen without either a total internal collapse of Israeli society or else, you know, nuclear war. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. And at this point, it's like, it turns into just your own personal, incredibly petty, incredibly self-centered attitude about what you think the online left is doing. It turns into just like looking at an issue that is black and white and saying, well, it's the worst crime that you can ever do, genocide, but the leftists are just like being crazy about it. Like, this is just your stupid gripes with leftist people online and what you perceive as like the broader movement, the broader pro-Palestinian movement. Okay? The internal collapse of Israeli society is going to happen. It is inevitable because it is built on the foundation of ethnic cleansing. Okay, it is propped up. It doesn't have the chattel slavery and the colonial extraction that the American government had, where it could have completed its ethnic cleansing as America did to the indigenous population here, and then continue on with its imperial project. Okay? Israel cannot maintain this without unlimited support from the United States of America. Whereas the United States of America is capable, or was capable of reaching a point of independence so it could continue dominating the fucking world, okay? And I believe that this is precisely the reason why, like, people chirp about this stuff, to be like, don't talk about the inconsistencies, don't talk about the inequities, don't talk about the apartheid, don't talk about the dissolution of Zionism or the Zionist state. Okay? Growing up, I thought being a Jew is the same thing as being a Christian, just another religion to choose from. I thought some white people are Catholic, some white people are Christian, and some are Jewish. I never thought they were an ethnic group until I found out that they probably wouldn't let me in the clubs. I'm not Jewish. What? What club? Anyway. Dangerous ambiguities. The vagueness of Zionism as a political Satan enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. The dangers of Nazism as a political statement enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. Okay? It's like, this is an argument that you're launching here is virtually identical to the Boers and their existence in apartheid South Africa, the white South Africans that wanted to maintain an apartheid. Okay? Like, it's ridiculous. It's like saying this about Nazi Germany. The dangers of developing enmity towards the Germans who support the Nazi regime. What the fuck is this? It enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. On the one hand, right-wing Israelis hold up all anti-Zionist protests as existentially threatening and inherently anti-Semitic. On the other hand, there is a long history of anti-Semites using the term Zionist in a deliberately equivocal ways, Zog, etc. Anti-Semites are happy for the opportunity to misappropriate the now popular anti-Zionist label to legitimize their agenda, and many people are not informed enough about anti-Semitism to recognize when this is happening. These problems are mutually reinforcing. You know what's crazy about this? This isn't wrong, okay? But what's wrong about this is to slam this in a conversation where you're supposed to be making this distinction, but from the perspective of someone who is not a Zionist. Okay? People like myself, we do this every fucking day. There are so many much better read, much better activists out there on this issue that make this distinction every fucking day. The difference is, we see Muslims and Palestinians as human beings, and I think if you have this statement, if you can just say, well, these people are being slaughtered, but you don't. You don't see them as human beings. You don't see them as full-blown human beings. Deep down inside, you have to feel like they kind of deserve it, and they should quietly just go away because they're ruining your day by simply existing in the direction of Israeli bombs and not quietly perishing away, but instead speaking out against their demise. Okay? Paragraph 3, dread. The online left has spent the last 20 months distributing hundreds of photos and videos of dead Palestinian children. The main effect of this, and this is the worst part about this, by the way, the main effect of this has been to create a population of people in a constant state of blood-boiling rage with no consequential political outlet. I fear this may be worse than useless. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are conceptually not the same, and conflating them is dangerous. But in practice, the way Israel is perceived does seep our seep out into attitudes towards Jews in general. I don't think the Jews who feel isolated and wary of the current atmosphere are simply hysterical or hallucinating. Yes, there's a communal trauma and hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism of Israel in the pretext of fighting anti-Semitism. But there's also a valid fear of historical anti-Semitism patterns recurring, and that fear gives power to the right-wing Zionist claim that only Israel can keep Jews safe. Does this mean Israel should not be criticized or sanctioned? Absolutely not. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to, if not outweighed by tangible benefits, so I approach the issue cautiously. This is the absolute worst possible thing you can say, because it is the most wokeified, most intellectualized version of what Benjamin Netanyahu says when he says, these are telegenically dead children. And you know who's actually distributing the photos of hundreds of dead Palestinian children? Palestinians are. It's not actually the left that's distributing those photos. It's the Palestinians themselves that are speaking out on their own genocide, on their own ethnic cleansing. So to sit there and be like, this is just the woke left being woke by really pushing people to get angry about this documented genocide every single day is a psychotic thing to say. This is the worst thing that she mentions in this entire fucking... It's not only wrong, once again, wrong on the facts. It is not the online left, because the online left is not in Gaza. Palestinians are in Gaza. They are the ones who are showing their own conditions. And to treat this as like a simple nuisance, something that is causing your day to be worse, something that's giving you blood-boiling rage, and then where does that rage go? Against Jews? Like, what kind of fucking statement is this? This is the most politically correct version of saying this is Pallywood that I've ever seen. It is an unimaginably freakish thing to say. Incredibly fucking disappointing. Like, what's the alternative? You see these harrowing images, and you don't look at them and feel some type of way. You don't actually try to get others to also feel angry and resentful towards what Israel is doing, which is genocide, and our contributions to said genocide as Americans. Crazy. A shameful statement. I cannot believe that Natalie typed this out, read it through, made sure there were no grammatical errors, and then thought that this was good to publish. It really truly reveals how little the people in her immediate orbit give a singular shred of a fuck about the lives of Palestinians. Clearly. There was not a single person that could have turned around and said, hey, you know how you said like conflating Israel with Judaism is dangerous? Maybe just hyper-focus on that aspect and talk about the cynical conflation being crafted by both liberal Zionists, and also the Nazis alike. I fear this may be worse than useless. We already talked about this. Yes, there's communal trauma and hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to. It's not outweighed by the tangible benefits. Yeah, I'm not going to contribute to anger and resentment towards the genocidal apartheid state of Israel unless there is an immediate solution. What is this if not cowardice? It also presents the issue as people who are pro-Palestine against Jews, okay? It's the long way to be this smug, it's the long way to take this like vapid, self-centered, incredibly smug attitude while talking about how, you know, every time you're doing, you know, activism or what you think is activism, when you go out to the streets and you protest against Israel, or you say Zionism is fascist, which it literally is, right? Every time you say the truth about Israel, every time you say the truth about Zionism as a political ideology, okay, as an ethno-supremacist, exterminationist political ideology, you're actually harming the Jews. Jews have been around for thousands of years. Zionism has been around for 78. Well, longer than 78, but Israel's been around for 78. Zionism has been around for a little bit longer than 78. The fuck do you mean? This conflation was deliberate, and it was a relatively new phenomenon. The notion that you would also come out with this statement after 20 months, hundreds of thousands of dead Palestinians. Every single day we see 50 Palestinians being shot at that are starving at a American Israel backed fake charity scheme because they've cut off all aid distribution into the Strip so they can do perfidy and use aid as a military mechanism to further displace and to further kill the Palestinian population, to make it impossible to survive in the Strip, so they can inevitably move them to concentration camps in Rafah and then move them away from the Palestinian lands into the Sinai Peninsula or wherever, probably the UAE. The idea that like this is the idea that this had anything to do with Judaism is fucking psychotic. But to say that 20 months in is extra crazy. It's literally this, but with better language. Hi, someone with heavy food sensory issues here. Frosted mini wheats are one of the only things I can actually consume regularly and not get sick from. Guilting people who can't support boycotts is ableist as fuck, but y'all aren't ready for that conversation. It's like, yeah, basically, but it's a far more severe situation because it's about genocide, like centering yourself amidst this like ongoing genocide and your own feelings and your fears, your hysterical fears that you have cultivated, instead of correcting people who have these hysterical fears that they represent, that they demonstrate on a regular fucking basis, and try to convince them, as your job is to convince people when they're wrong, right? If you are a essayist on fucking YouTube, this is your job. Your job is to literally tell people that they might be a little crazy, or in the nicest ways possible, nudge them in the appropriate direction. That's what I do. That's what you're supposed to be doing as well. Aren't you supposed to be de-radicalizing people away from the alt-right, from Nazi-style ideologies? That's what I've been doing. What happened to you? Where did you go? There is no difference here. Bitterness. There have been so many controversies, some of it like intra-community, with respect to like takes that ContraPoints has had throughout her career that I have never really paid too much attention to, you know? I have not. I've thought that she is an overall positive figure that plays a formative role in crafting lengthy, visually appealing arguments that can reach a lot of people and change their minds. Okay? Contra has never de-radicalized an alt-righter. Her messaging has been exclusively for the social media obsessed libs who singularly care about domestic social issues. I don't think that's the case. I think there are probably even people in here who have seen seen trans existence in a totally different light as a consequence of watching her videos. I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's correct at all. I think like she has been able to change people's minds on certain issues. She's played a role in this, okay? Just as I have, just as other people have. I was transphobic as a trans woman and her viz changed my life. I'm really hurt by how bad she is on this topic. ContraPoints radicalized my ex who liked Ben Shapiro. Yeah, no, I think she has played a decent role in this. Much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focused on Palestine and the complicity of the Democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. This campaign had the following effects. 0 Palestinian lives were saved. Not one fewer bomb or bullet was fired by the IDF. It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the U.S. will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years and making protests against Israel much riskier and less effective. Trump is also, incidentally, a menace to me and basically everyone I care about. A perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. It's just so, I mean, this is so incredibly fucking self-centered. It's crazy. And not because I'm like centering this around what she's saying, which is trans issues and how much worse they're getting under Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden, even though I think plenty of trans people would disagree with that as well, saying that a lot of these anti-trans initiatives kickstarted under Joe Biden and Trump has just simply accelerated it, reaching its logical conclusion. But not only that, but especially on the issue of Israel, this is even more pertinent to the discussion. She is completely incorrect on this, not on the trans issue side, but she's completely incorrect on what she is saying about, one, the singular focus of the left. At least here, a lot of people would say that I was singularly focused on Palestine. It was not the case, okay? There were a litany of criticisms that I had about the Kamala campaign and a litany of criticisms I had about the Joe Biden administration, okay? Gaza was certainly an important part of this because it's a fucking genocide, okay? But it is crazy that, like, there is no logic here because you should be mad at the people in power. You should be mad at Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for wanting to continue this genocide, even if it was politically infeasible for them to do so, even if continuing this genocide actually played a role in her losing the election to an incompetent fascist piece of shit. The idea that the genocide protesters, the anti-genocide protesters are wrong and not the Democratic Party that looked at a 75-25 issue in that moment that signified perhaps the most significant problem with the Kamala Harris campaign, which was not cutting ties with the Biden administration, not just on Gaza, but on numerous different policies, because Biden was incredibly unpopular, immensely unpopular. He was old. He was decrepit. He was a beacon of a dying empire, a dying party that had fallen out of favor. And Kamala Harris said, I'm not going to do anything different. She could have been a fresh new face. And she did not do that. The real analysis here is not that the people are wrong for seeing these horrifying images every day and responding in the way that every normal human being with a conscience should respond. Okay? The real anger and resentment should be, how the fuck did the Democrats not care about all of this death and destruction and the understandable resentment that was brewing organically in the base? How did they not even cynically, in a cold and calculated, heartless manner, not take advantage? I can't believe I'm using these terms, but like not even take advantage of the ongoing issue and present yourself as anti-war, anti-genocide. Even if you didn't care about the dead, charred children of Palestine, you could have simply used this as an opportunity to cut your ties with the Biden administration that was a dead weight. It was an anchor around your neck. It was criminal negligence. They did not care, okay? They did not care enough. They were too predisposed with trying to win with their own method, with their own strategy, that they refused to see that this issue had changed forever. Sending Bill Clinton to Dearborn to talk about Judea and Samaria. Sending Richie Torres to Dearborn. I had these conversations with people who are connected to the Biden administration. If you recall, I did the Pod Johns. I did Pod Save America before the election and after the election. If you recall, every single thing that I brought up that the Kamala Harris campaign was doing that was wrong before the election became the major focal point of how they lost the election. Running around with Liz Cheney, refusing to let a Palestinian who was in the Democratic Party and is still in the Democratic Party speak at the DNC. Incredible, incredible failures. Failure after failure. Saying you're going to do the most lethal military. Saying you're going to be more militant at the border than the Trump administration actually is. They're not sincere about their interest in destroying all Latinos that live on U.S. soil. It's not like this was impossible to see. There were plenty of dumbasses, myself included, that saw it from a million miles away. So the real resentment should be directed at the people in power that refused to listen, that refused to abide by the principles of the democratic process where our electeds are supposed to represent our interests. And in a situation where it's 75-25, I mean, what more can you ask for? It was a genocide that started in an election campaign, during an election season, during an election year. Elections are supposed to be a pressure valve for people not to revolt because they feel like they have a say in this process. And the Democratic Party's refusal to hear the cries of its own base of support showed so many Americans that this is not a real democratic process at all, which is the truth, but, you know. People probably cared more about inflation and social issues more than foreign policy. That's not true. That is not true. This was a major, major problem. Okay? That's not how campaigns are run. This is not how elections are run. Of course people cared about inflation. Okay? Kamala Harris had no good solutions to that either, with the exception of grocery prices. Limiting grocery prices. That was her banger fucking campaign policy that she presented, that she packed up very quickly, even though it was her most popular policy. I covered it extensively. Okay? But if you want to look at this, not as simply Gaza, but from a more holistic perspective, Gaza is yet another glaringly obvious representation of Kamala Harris's inability and disinterest in cutting ties with the anchor that was around her fucking neck. The Biden administration. The very fact that she was presented as an alternative in this unceremonious, truly unique, unprecedented way should have been the major reason as to why she has to quickly cut ties with the administration she was a part of and utilize the limited amount of influence and power she has as the vice president at the time to make some changes, to give assurances to the American public that she will be different. It is crazy. The idea that foreign policy is in America especially is separate from domestic policy is stupid, because every single dollar spent on a bomb, spent on a rocket, spent on rockets that Israel deploys on the Palestinian population is a dollar that could go back to you. It could go back to your roads. It's a dollar that could be spent educating your kids. It's a dollar that could be spent building schools, factories, fixing the roads, building better infrastructure. So make no mistake, it is a lie that people say when they say, oh, foreign policy is a separate thing. No, of course it's not a separate thing. They want you to think it's a separate thing. They want you to think that these things are not directly connected to one another. That is by design. Trump is also incidentally a menace to me and everyone I care about. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course, who are overwhelmingly the victims here. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Natalie, for saying the Palestinians are overwhelmingly the victims here. I hope that someday American policy will shift in their favor, and I will continue to support that cause. TLDR, I see the situation as bleak, intractable, extremely divisive, and devoid of any element that could be appropriately transformed into political entertainment. That's why I haven't made a video about it. Hopefully it goes without saying that these are just my thoughts. I'm sure other bread tubers, in air quotes, have different opinions. So that was her take. And of course, when this unfolded on the timeline, everyone fucking lost their minds, partially because ContraPoints is a trans woman. So obviously anything that a trans person says gets amplified a million times over by transphobes and you know, everyone else, of course. So there is that. But what I don't understand about the entertainment part of this is that, are you doing entertainment when you talk about trans issues? Is this not an existential issue for you? When you make a video trying to convert people, trying to change people's minds about trans existence, is that simply entertainment? I don't think it's entertainment. There is an entertainment component to what I do. I see that. I understand that. But it serves the larger interest that I have in getting people to change their minds. And of course, predictably, Ethan Klein looked at this and went, wow, I couldn't have said this any better myself. This is exactly the war I've been waging. You know, I also think it's a genocide, but everyone should shut the fuck up about it. Yeah, ContraPoints' whole take here is, believe me, in my heart, I oppose this genocide, but actively campaigning against it is unproductive, anti-Semitic, and bad tactics. And also makes me feel bad, and also led to Kamala Harris losing the election. I don't think any reasonable person would tell her you have no right to feel anxiety as a trans woman because the genocide takes precedence. Is putting the genocide as a priority in spite of our specific oppressions. Phil Lawlins, thank you for the 50 gifted subs. Holy shit. What is this? But Trump is literally destroying everything in besties to Bibi. There won't be anything left. I agree with her. It's amazing how everyone can't understand it is in immediate attack mode. Trump is literal Hitler and we can't get made mad, you mean? It's Stasia. I am genuinely shocked at how long you have spent, how much time you have spent in this community, and yet you still cannot get this through your dome, okay? American foreign policy is fucking uniparty. Genocide under Joe Biden started. Prosecutions took place under Joe Biden. Joe Biden's administration literally accelerated the prosecution of people like Mahmoud Khalil, made it an inevitability. Trump came in and seized control over this mechanism of pushback and took it to the next level. The Biden administration set the ground, set the stage for the Trump administration to capitalize on prosecuting unfairly people who are speaking out against this genocide. 3,500 student protesters were arrested under the Biden administration. I got to start just lying to people and being like, 3,500. Did you guys know Donald Trump arrested 3,500 college students for speaking out against Israel? How fucked up is that? So then the liberals go, oh my God, I'm so mad about that, only to then turn around and be like, no, actually, that was Joe Biden that did that. Of course things are worse under Trump. No one thinks that Trump is not going to be worse than Biden. He is worse than Biden. Everyone knew this. I knew this. I didn't want Donald Trump to win for this reason. That's why I kept criticizing Kamala Harris, because I thought maybe something would fucking stick. Maybe these guys, enough of the fucking staffers that are in here, would be able to like elevate the issue. It didn't fucking work. Anyway, there's also so much that is just wrong. Interesting how the left are two unreasonable people, never seem to center the thoughts, feelings, or opinions of actual Palestinians themselves. It's not the left that were sharing the images of dead children. It's the Gazans desperate for someone to witness them. This has led to some very cool replies. I just stop buying Starbucks, blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. The rest of it is stupid. Instead, they just pretended that nobody answered the phone when people mentioned Gaza. Yeah. This is E's whole take. So, yeah, I mean, this is something that people are recognizing at least now. So it seems like a new rhetorical strategy is dropped. Concede that Israel is doing a genocide/war crimes, but then proceed to spend 100 more times and 100 times more space complaining that people opposing it are basically worse because they hurt Jewish feelings/make Democrats look bad. Did you read what she said or just read a little and get into your feelings? If you read what she said and agree with her, you're objectively wrong. And I can only tell you what the truth is, but you will probably never agree with me because part of the problem that you are exhibiting here is fundamentally unsolvable. You have to solve it on your own. Okay? And that is that it is not the left that is showing these images of Palestinians being slaughtered. It is Palestinians that are showing these images. Okay? It's also not just the online left that has made this their cause. A lot of Americans from every different walk of life recognize the cruelty here. And if you actually ever stepped outside of your own bubble and went to one of these fucking protests, you would realize that. If you ever actually participated in something, if you ever actually stood for something, you would realize that. How is this any different than when a racist person says, "Oh, you calling me out for my racism is the real problem here, not the very fact that I'm doing something racist." It's the same shit. You showing me what my tax dollars are doing to the Palestinians is hurting my feelings, and it's politically unsolvable. I've completely given up. It's nihilistic, and you should give up too. That's what this is. Just let them die. Why do you make this a bother? But yeah, of course, podcaster Ethan Klein voices support for ContraPoints on his Instagram story. It is important to remind people that there is space to be anti-genocide, but also against annihilating Israel. Thank you, ContraPoints. It's important to remind people that there is space to be anti-genocide, pro-Palestine, but also against annihilating Israel. It is my belief that any lasting peace must have two elements, Palestinian self-determination and secure borders for Israel. Without both, peace fails. Many leftists would rather focus on purity tests and social credits than having a meaningful and realistic conversation about creating a lasting peace. The reaction to your post will prove my point, unfortunately. This is the other side of the story. Annihilating Israel. Dog, you're a fucking Nazi, okay? When you say annihilating Israel, what you're talking about is the perspective that Israel should have democracy for everyone. Israel should not do an ethnic cleansing, and Israel should allow the Palestinians, who literally it occupies every fucking facet of existence of, breathing room, okay? Meaningful existence. Treat them like fucking human beings instead of a parasitic force that must be excised. That is unacceptable. Why? Because you're a Zionist. And you have the exact same hysterical fear that is rooted within Islamophobia and ethno-religious supremacist attitudes. Palestinians and Jews can never get along. Palestinian Muslims, Palestinian Christians, and Jews can never live in the same place. That is exactly what people said in apartheid South Africa. Black people and white people can't live side by side. That's exactly what people said in segregationist South, in the Jim Crow South. That's what they said against the abolition of slavery. Anti-Semitism being a real bigotry does not change this dynamic. This is why people say you are a Zionist. Simply claiming that you're anti-genocide, but then spending every fucking waking moment talking about how, well, sorry, you know, these Muslims and these Christian Palestinians, these Muslim Palestinians, and these Jews, they can't live together because that would annihilate all the Jews. That'd be a Holocaust. That's insane. That's exactly what fucking segregationists in the Jim Crow South said. That's exactly what David Duke says, okay, about black people, about Jews. It's fucking insane. Oh, we just want secure borders. Like how? You're using the same terminology that Trump uses when he's talking about Mexicans invading the country. How does that not read for anyone else? Because there are a lot of liberals out there who are just like completely rudderless and have no capacity to analyze the situation, have no way of understanding that like they are unironically defending the exact same types of bigotry that they despise when Trump does it to their friends and their neighbors. But when it comes down to Israel, when it comes down to like anti-Semitism, I think like that is brick their brain a little bit. So they don't see it in the same exact vein. Oh, it's different? Why is it different? Why can't Muslims, Christians of Palestinian background live alongside Jews in a singular, solitary, secular state? Why does this have to be an ethno-state? I need you guys to understand, this is why I think history is very important to learn so we do not repeat the lessons, okay? Every single historic fascist movement has always packaged its ideology with reason, okay? The Nazis didn't say we have to kill the Jews because we're evil and these guys aren't actually doing anything, but we love killing them because we're evil and we just like want to kill Jews. They didn't say that. They created a logical reason. They created first the Jewish question, the dehumanization of Jews, the claims that Jews are a parasitic force that is both powerful and weak at the same time, the idea that Jews are taking down the German state by engaging in degeneracy in the halls of academia, controlling the money supply, all of this stuff. And then after decades of dehumanization that also even predated Germany itself, of centuries of dehumanization and anti-Semitism, they were able to captivate enough people. They were able to basically take advantage of that pre-existing historic anti-Semitism. That is precisely what you're advancing when you talk about Palestinians in this way. Okay? First, you present an issue with the conclusion of the argument in mind, okay? You create a fake issue. You say Jews are ruining society, okay? The economic volatility that you're experiencing is because of the Jews. Then you keep just saying Jews are responsible for everything, okay? All of the wrong, everything that you're experiencing. And then you have to solve this problem, right? But the problem never existed. First, you create the Jewish question, then you have to have a solution for the Jewish question that you created, and that solution is the Holocaust. And that is precisely what Israel has done to the Palestinians. First, you create a question, Palestinians, the Palestinian question, and then you have to find a solution to the problem of Palestinian existence. In America, there's a different version of this, obviously. Immigrants, non-white immigrants specifically, create hysteria around it, keep hammering the point that they're violent criminals, keep saying that they're animals, keep saying that they're ruining society. As material conditions worsen, there are more and more people that are angry, resentful, frustrated, looking for an alternative, looking for a reason as to why they feel this anger. And one side doesn't actually respond to any of those frustrations, those economic anxieties, the Democrats, of course. And then the other side turns around and says, you're feeling all that anger and resentment, and that's good. It's because immigrants have taken your social safety nets. And then people lean on that. Now you have successfully created an environment where there is an immigrant question or a Jewish question or a Palestinian question. Now you're looking for a solution. But the problem never existed to begin with. It was not a real problem to begin with. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people that look to these historic incidents, these historic events, mass cruelty, systematized death and destruction like the Holocaust, and think, oh, well, it's different now. It's not different. The methods are the same. The fake hysteria is the same. The dehumanization is exactly the same. You cannot comprehend because you have been swept away with this propaganda. That's it. In a way, Ethan Klein and anyone else that has this kind of opinion is unironically in the same boat as the average baker in Nazi Germany that was like, I don't know what's going on in there. They put a lot of Jews in there. I don't know what's happening. It smells weird. There's ash everywhere. But I'm just going to keep baking. I don't really like what they're doing to the Jews, but I'm just, at the same time, I am really worried. I am really worried about what the Jews could potentially do to me if they were to live side by side with me. That's it. Just so chat knows, this is literally like saying I'm a liberal Jim Crow supporter. Of course, I abhor lynchings, but what neighborhoods must maintain secure borders and radical civil rights terrorists will call me racist for saying this. Yep. That's it. It's so crazy. That's why liberals absolutely despise Zora, who uses liberal terminology and like the supposed values that liberals claim to care about, claim to defend when discussing this issue. When he says, look, instead of going down this rabbit hole of like, talking about how do states have a right to exist, they don't have a right to exist, blah, 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 that can like muddy the waters. He says, no, Israel has a right to exist. It just has to exist as a equal state with equal rights and representation for all. Obviously, I don't have to engage in this like short, quippy political answer so I can dig deep and explain to you the real reasons why this like dynamic that persists, this question is a cynical one that is framed in a way to make the other side, the correct side, the moral side, look scary to onlookers. What is this? ContraPoints during the Holocaust. Yes, it's a genocide, but sharing photos of dead bodies only leads to the left to bloodthirsty anti-German rage. The left made Nazis their boogeyman when the majority of Germans are Nazis. Do you want a total collapse of German society? Yeah. And the answer is this. The answer is simple to like people that say, oh, you want to annihilate Israel. It's like, no, dude, Israel is annihilating itself because of their desperation to annihilate Palestinian existence. Okay? I always go back to the 2017-2018 Supreme Court protest that Israeli society broadly engaged in. A lot of liberal Zionists were like, how did we get here? How did this country become so right-wing? I don't understand. We're the most moral nation. We're the gay Mecca in the Middle East. Like, what the fuck? Even though Lebanon is right there, right? It's because the entire society is designed around exterminating Palestinians. And of course, if you don't address that inherent contradiction, then eventually more and more right-wing figures are going to seize control over the state. And it's going to come for you as well. It's going to come for you because you're gay. It's going to come for you because you're doing something that these vicious, rabid, ultra-right politicians, Jewish Nazis, don't want you to do. That's why these polls are also crazy that like people avoid responding to. New poll, Hebrew University shows roughly 82% of Jewish Israelis agree with the genocidal idea that there is no innocence in Gaza. Yes, the primary contradiction of settlement will result in worsening violence. It's a death cult. Exactly. Fascism, and I know Natalie knows this personally, fascism is a suicidal ideology because it requires the consistent extermination of an outgroup at the behest of an increasingly shrinking in-group. That's it. So we're watching historic events that Nazi Germany went through play itself out in a much shorter time span, in real time, in broad daylight, and yet people still are confused by it. It's crazy. And yeah, you got like, liberals trying to intellectualize these statements. Something I'd like to add is that I personally find the focus on labeling it a genocide makes it harder to build stronger coalitions. What coalition are you building with someone that has seen this genocide unfold that still says it's not a genocide? I don't need somebody to consider it a genocide specifically to work together to stop it. I need them to consider it wrongful, unjust, horrifying, and worth fighting against. While I might not be happy if we disagree beyond that, I can live with it if we make meaningful change. Something that I value a lot more than internal purity testing. This is not internal purity testing. If you can't even fucking recognize it as a genocide, then why? No one is going to go out. Seemingly, even people apparently that do consider it a genocide still spend most of their time shitting on people who are trying to do something. I posted a similar comment. The label flattens discourse. It allows any means to the ends of ending genocide because it is true. That's the reality. Because it is a genocide and it does allow any means to end said genocide. And that's what scares these people. Okay? That's what it is. Because God forbid you actually have to see the fucking humanity of all of those people that are there, all those people that are trapped in Gaza, fighting back against people that you feel closer to, the Israeli occupying force. That's it. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you think these guys are ISIS style. Ironically enough, they don't think Israel is ISIS. They think the Palestinian population is closer to ISIS because, scary Muslim, Arab, right? Like, you don't want to close your eyes for a brief moment and try to, like, center Palestinians in this conversation. Close your eyes for a brief moment and imagine what it would be like to be in the shoes of an orphaned child that has nothing, that has been left with nothing because of this brutal, oppressive apartheid state that sees this child and his family as parasites, that is doing everything in its power to exterminate them, slowly but surely torture them. And then you take up arms to defend your family, what remains of your people. You are not conditioned into seeing the humanity of Palestinians, the humanity of Muslims, the humanity of Arabs, because God forbid you recognize them as human beings with their own dreams. Okay? God forbid you recognize them as human beings who, of course, are going to be pushed into a corner only for so long until they try to fight their way out of it. You can't see that. That's why so much of this conversation goes back to the basics. Recognizing Palestinians as human beings and not just faceless bystanders and victims on the side. Hamas is not an alien force, okay? The Palestinian resistance is not an alien outsider force that unilaterally decides to do certain things and put the lives of Palestinians at risk by angering the great state of Israel. Like, that's a ridiculous assessment to make. They are the orphaned soldiers of Palestine. They are the people whose parents have been slaughtered, okay? They're not outsiders. They're Palestinians. And there might be disagreements in the methods that they utilize. Okay? Of course. Of course there are. But nobody deserves genocide. Israelis don't deserve genocide. They are the ones doing a genocide. That is how unjustifiable genocide is. That even a genocide in retaliation to genocide is still unconscionable, is still unjust. That's it. It should stop you from saying the truth and calling it a genocide, but I'll gladly take the help of those who won't commit. Senators like Bernie and Van Hollen who promote arms embargo, liberal Zionists like J Street or Lander, they can still be short-term allies and end the slaughter. I don't care what they think as long as they're doing the right thing. Oh, for sure. For sure. Having said that, however, and I have said this over and over again, what you're describing here, these people are having a conversation with like normal individuals who are never going to be invested in like going to a fucking protest, because the very fact that they are fantasizing about like not being able to build a coalition around the term genocide in and of itself is a clear-cut indication that they've never been to a fucking protest to begin with. Hot take, everybody's in the wrong? No, that's not. This is a stupid take. It's not a hot take. It's just a dumb take. The label doesn't change what's happening. It doesn't change how we should seek the end of conflict diplomacy. The only people who benefit are the extremists whose power grows from radicalization, like the extremists. What is this? ContraPoints is wrong on point 3. Coverage of Israel's genocide clearly moved the American public opinion. See Gallup polls. ContraPoints is right that building pro-Palestine opinion hasn't changed policy. There's no other route. We need to remove Zionist Dems and elect leftists. Yeah, I mean, socialism done left is like flanking ContraPoints here. The coalition that these guys are talking about that they can't build already exists. They're just not a part of it. And that's the reason why they're speaking on it as though it's untenable. Okay? That's my point. If you're having this discussion, that means you have never participated in this. Do you think every single person in this chat agrees with me 100%? Do you think every single person... When I go to the fucking march in D.C. and I speak at the pro-Palestinian rally, do you think every single person at that rally, the tens of thousands of people that are there, all agree with me 100%? No, of course not. It's not about that. It's never been about that. You would already know that if you actually participated in any kind of meaningful action. That's it. There are people who are even liberal Zionists that move away from those positions eventually, but there are plenty of people, both in American politics right now broadly, that are unfortunately, some of the most radical people that we have are liberal Zionists in American politics, okay? And then there are those like Zoran who are anti-Zionists. And we see how the media and politicians alike treat them. But the idea that this is like supposed to be purity testing is idiotic, okay? That's why I always say, look, you can have disagreements with me on this stuff, okay? But when you become opposition, when you become a hurdle that I have to clear to get my message across, then you're no longer with it. That's why I always talk about Bernie Sanders, who I have disagreements with on this issue, on the issue of Israel. And yet I don't make this a larger problem because he does not. Bernie Sanders could spend every waking moment. He's the most popular Jewish elected in the country for the past multiple decades. He could be spending every waking moment talking about how scared he is for his future generations, for his grandchildren who are also Jewish, how scared he is about the rising tide of anti-Semitism and how it's sweeping away political discourse, and how people who are pro-Palestine are actually cynically saying they're pro-Palestine and they just want the annihilation of the Israeli state. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that at all. The reason why he doesn't do that is because I think he understands that there is validity to the claims being made by those who are more radical than he is. He does not shy away from endorsing people who have a different position on this, a more radical position than he does on this. I don't know why H Bomber guy is catching strays on this. I feel like he's not. Am I wrong? H Bomber guy, people have been like talking about as well. The Cumtown boys have been more vocally supportive of Palestinians and use their platform more progressively than philosophy tuber H Bomber guy, who said fuck all in ContraPoints, who's just fully Zionist. I don't think that's the case, but maybe I haven't really been paying close attention. But I feel like H Bomber guy just doesn't say anything at all. He just doesn't like really tweet or post anything ever. Whereas what do you call it? Philosophy Tube has, I'm pretty sure, posted about it. Cavernicle mentioned him in his video that also included ContraPoints. Is that what happened? Is this why this whole event unfolded? Because he made a YouTube video about this? The death of BreadTube, creator responsibility in Israel.
Go from one of the OG BreadTube creators.
God damn, dude, this video.
So how did ContraPoints go from one of the OG BreadTube creators?
What is happening here? And there we have the heart of it all, drama slop. I don't think Cavernicle is drama slop. What is happening here?
You know, have other things in your mind you want to talk about, and
YouTube is blocking ad blockers.
So how did ContraPoints go from
That's
one of
crazy.
the OG BreadTube creators?
What is happening? I have the big Joel that I want to talk about as well.
To the subreddit discussing if they should.
Fuck, I have to pee.
Completely ban her content from being posted there. That is something I want to talk about today, and this video has actually been in my head for the longest time. But I made a decision a couple weeks ago, like, not to make it. And I just thought it wouldn't be helpful. And sometimes...
Holy fuck, that was crazy.
You just, you know...
That's the longest piss of my life. You've got to use Firefox for YouTube. Chrome is trash now. No, I think it's because the internet Wi-Fi is ass. Adblock still works flawlessly on YouTube if you use Firefox. Okay. Get braver, Vivaldi. I'm not going to do any of those things. We can hear you pissing, by the way. Wait, really? I was yelling from the bathroom. That was the longest piss of my life, dude. That was crazy. He criticized their silence on the matter, but he also recognized that they shouldn't feel compelled to do so. More like he feels they should have said something a long time ago, but not now after months of being harassed by their followers. He was disappointed, but not surprised. Sounds like you were frying chicken. I was moaning. And frying chicken at the same time. Oh, also, my goat, Big Joel, had this to say as well. Which, by the way, Big Joel is a great example of a content creator who also rarely posts, like doesn't post that frequently, but as a hold on. Wait, hold on. Oh shit. Or wait for him. Cause sorry. Big Joel is the goat on this. I mean, he's been super fucking vocal about this stuff. I mean, he's Jewish, and he has never shied away from letting his opinion be known. He's the man. I have a lot of respect for him. Also, wait, hold on. We got people in the building.
Have other things in your mind you want to talk about, and other things were in my head, like how the UK is going full fascist because of
Hello? You can bring him upstairs.
its war on free speech to protect Israel, things like that. Hello? But I've come back to it because I saw that ContraPoints was beef.
What is this fucking video, dude? Why is the video just not playing? Like, I thought it would have buffered at this point to give me like at least a little bit of fucking at least give me like a little bit of fucking range, you know? A little bit of check task manager. Change the quality to 1080p. It's on auto at fucking 480p right now, and it's still not loading.
Taylor Lorenz on Twitter, and it was
I think it's got to be
anti-Semitism. And this is something that seems to be only discussed right now by people who don't really talk much about Gaza and also exist in leftist video essay circles. Now, I've actually called out people before, not by name, but there seems to be some sort of correlation between leftists who are on Nebula and leftists who have chosen to talk about leftist anti-Semitism while Israel are doing the worst crime against humanity of this century and one of the worst crimes in the post-war era. I just find it really interesting that that is the case. But this video isn't me trying to pressure anyone to talk about Gaza, because to me right now, if you haven't spoke about it, I don't give a shit if you speak about it. You've clearly made a choice not to talk about it. So I'm not pressuring anyone. I don't want anyone to go to other creators' comment section and say, why haven't you spoken about Gaza? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? It doesn't matter. By October, it would have been 2 years, and they've had absolutely loads of time to do it. This video isn't some sort of pressure campaign against very prominent creators to do it.
Yeah, I think at this point, the pragmatic thing is to just not get in the way of people who speak out on this stuff. So I think ContraPoints saying that doing this was like ridiculous, and it's going to breed enmity towards her. It's going to breed animosity. I mean, it's so crazy. Like, you've already been so quiet, noticeably absent from this conversation. I don't know why you thought that you would be able to like logically arrive at this like middle of the road position where you're like, well, here's why I was silent about it, because it's utterly unproductive and you guys caused Donald Trump to win. Like, that is going to shift attention away back to you in a very negative fashion. Okay? It's so silly. Yeah, I mean, this was the initial thing that she tweeted. Killing 60,000 people is probably the worst atrocity of the last 2 years, but in the scope of modern history, it's unfortunately far from unique. It's obvious Hillary Clinton made the call. Yeah, dude, Hillary Clinton made the boss call to fucking a bread tuber that makes one video a year. I mean, come on, dude. ContraPoints recently made a statement on Palestine, and I did find this point the most interesting. That was really the only outcome of the outrage over Palestine over the last few years, nothing plus slightly hurting Kamala's chances. Americans have profoundly changed their perspective on Israel. The average Democrat is more inclined towards Palestine than Israel now. Is that nothing? Is our relationship with our greatest ally going to disappear in a day? It just seems like she's applying an overly narrow measure of success. I guess I just don't understand what activism even exists to do, or more broadly, what human anger at injustice exists to do under such a cynical account of things. I truly don't have an axe to grind with Natalie. I just keep thinking like Zohran Mamdani's the front runner to be mayor of New York. Says he'd arrest Netanyahu. Was his a victory of the online left? At least kind of right. More relevant there than with Kamala, at least. I don't know why I turned into Big Joel's voice as well. I tuned Big Joel's voice when I was reading this. I think being mad is completely understandable in this process. But you should be mad at the right people. You should be mad at those who actually were responsible for Kamala Harris's electoral defeat. And that's not the pro-Palestine protesters. It's Kamala Harris herself that refused to say something different than Joe Biden on this issue, when it wasn't just the people that were fucking going out and protesting. It was literally so many Americans that also were looking for something different from Kamala Harris. They were demanding something different. And she never did that. She never gave people that. She never gave people that assurance that she was going to be different on Gaza, but on everything else as well. Natalie, I want to say first and foremost that I respect you, but I have some pretty deep criticisms as an anti-Zionist Jew. I mean, this is an effort post from someone in her community on the subreddit, I think. If it's not a topic touching domestic social issues or something that personally affects Contra, she doesn't give a shit about it. But it does. It does touch domestic issues. As I've said over and over again, the 60,000 comment was taken out of context and made sense in the context of what it was replying to, if I recall correctly. And unfortunately, she's right. It's not unique. We've had technically larger genocides a dozen times in the last few decades, but that doesn't distract from the urgency of this one. If anything, it makes it more urgent to prevent it from going even further. Also, it's not even 60,000. It's certainly more than that. The 60,000 number is a severe underestimate that everybody understands is a severe underestimate at this point. She said that in June. And no, there are other conflicts that have taken place that are just as violent, if not even more violent. Okay, the point is we couldn't stop that. It's like saying, well, the indigenous genocide happened and we let that happen. It's like, well, we didn't. You know what I mean? When people talk about other atrocities, it feels, or it's not even it feels, when you talk about other atrocities that have taken place historically or even in contemporary society, what you're basically saying is, well, I don't give a shit about any of that, and I would have fucking stood in opposition to those who wanted to put an end to it back then, and I'm doing it now. That's it. That's it. Is it anti-Semitic, or am I wrong to believe that the only people who can apply effective pressure are Jews who don't live in Israel? No. No, not even. It wouldn't hurt if anti-Zionist Jews were even more vocal, or if more prominent Jews were anti-Zionist openly. But there are plenty of prominent anti-Zionist Jews right now. You know, they are some of the leaders in this movement. Okay. But no, this relationship is not built around Jews with money that are, or Jews in powerful positions that are just like holding it together. That's not the case. Did none of you listen to the rest of my comment? Or literally said other genocide being larger doesn't make this one less urgent. It makes it more urgent because we don't want this to get as large as others have been. Yes, but also we have a direct involvement. Like, there is no other country that we have such a direct involvement with. Okay, Sudan. People talk about Sudan. I've talked about Sudan as well. The Rapid Support Forces are backed by the UAE. Okay? Who gives them the weapons and money and training and logistics? The RSF is doing ethnic cleansing in Sudan. Okay? It's the UAE. Who gives the UAE backing? We do. but that is one step removed. Okay? It is an indirect way of contributing to this ethnic cleansing campaign. Israel is direct. Israel is basically, or the genocide in Yemen. Saudi and the UAE, of course, again, where are proxies there? They were the reasons. They were the responsible parties. Okay? They took an ongoing civil war and turned it into a machine of death and destruction. We gave them the laser-guided munitions packages. We gave them the munitions in general to deploy it on top of Yemen, on the civilian population, on the children that they killed. But it is not the same as Israel. And the reason why it's not the same as Israel is because Israel is directly involved in the domestic affairs of the United States of America in a much more meaningful capacity than Saudi Arabia ever could be. And the same goes for the UAE. Okay? This is the reason why people hyper-focus on it. Not because it's, Jews and it's the Jewish state or something like that. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do feel that way because they're, maybe a little anti-Semitic or very anti-Semitic. Okay? But the direct involvement that we have and the complicity that we have in the genocide in Gaza is incomprehensible. It's not comparable to the Saudi Arabian activities in the region or the UAE activities in the region. Okay? People, at least up until now, have not been threatened with deportation for speaking out against, like, Saudi Arabia or demanding an arms embargo to Saudi Arabia when they were doing a fucking genocide in Yemen. People don't get fucking fired from their job. You could say Saudi Arabia did 9/11. You're not getting fucking fired from your job for saying that. Okay? But you say Israel's doing a genocide, you're going to get fired. Well, at least in the past. And even to this day, there's still a tremendous amount of social pressure. It's in the legislation. What is this? Thinking about this again, we will never be fully human beings. Oh, every day I become more and more third worldist. We will never be fully human beings. So these people are just objects, cudgels, and lenses through which to view myopic Western discourses. Thinking about this again. Interesting perspective here from a member of the Houthi movement's political bureau in Yemen, one who previously spoken highly of Lenin and the October Revolution. The English philosopher John Locke and the French philosopher Voltaire, the most important philosophers of liberal freedom, were slave traders who contributed to companies that traded African slaves. The English philosopher John Stuart Mill, one of the most important pioneers of liberal philosophy, was an employee in the East India Company, which was concerned with administrating the British colonies in India. The German philosopher Hegel, who is described as the last of the encyclopedic philosophers, and who believed that history is the awareness of freedom, used to say that the inevitable fate of the Asian empires was to submit to the Europeans and that China would one day be forced to surrender to this fate. Even an original writer and philosopher like Marx, who devoted his writings to opposing and dissecting capitalist exploitation, used to justify Western imperialist colonization of the East on the pretext of the shortcomings of the Eastern peoples and that they could not represent themselves and that someone else must represent them. This is the heritage that continues to guide the Western mind in its dealings with the issues of the East in general and the Islamic East in particular. Yeah, I mean, Karl Marx is, he had a lot of kooky ideas initially, all right? He evolved from them. This kind of invisible bias is baked into the collective consciousness of those of the wokest thinkers in the Western world. Okay, This doesn't mean that their writing is inconsequential or you should cast it aside. I'm not saying that at all. But you should be reminded of these biases when you see someone who does actually benefit from the bounties of empire and recognizes that benefit and seeks to continue that that uneven extraction and exploitation, hyper exploitation, super profits from the global south. That's just it. Some people recognize this standard. They recognize that they benefit from it tremendously, and they want it to continue. Okay? But I can't believe I spent so much time on this. Yeah, there's a fire department outside and cops. This is New York City, baby. ContraPoints put out a video on her pre-ContraPoints channel. She calls Islam reformer get out. Yeah, I know. She had Islamophobic opinions, and maybe she hasn't shed away a lot of that, okay? I don't care, especially because I think this was a pre-gender confirmation. I'm not like, I'm not going to like dead name and show someone like that when they were being Islamophobic. It's like ridiculous. I think what her current position on the matter speaks. I think you're having a harder time coming to terms with who Contra is than most of the chat. I expect we'll see in 6 weeks total silence from her, or a revelation of her actual non-reserved opinions that are going to be a lot more unhinged. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, what she did here is it basically explains her worldview fairly well, I think. It's not in any way, shape, or form all that different from the way that Ethan has evolved, or I guess rather devolved